The Panathenaia was a great festival held by the polis of Athens in honour of Athena. There were actually two kinds of festival: the lesser Panathenaia, which was held annually, and the great Panathenaia, held once every 4 years. The procession would start at the Dipylon Gate, an entrance to the city, before winding its way up to the Acropolis. So many would gather outside the gate that the Athenians eventually built the Pompeion to help organise the start of the procession. The Pompeion dominated the gate, measuring 70 by 30 metres. Next, they went through the Kerameikos. This contained an ancient cemetery, and was an area which symbolised transition before arriving at the Agora. This was the market and centre of day-to-day life in Athens. The horsemen, aristocrats, elder citizens, and women in the procession would have felt civic pride for their great city as they carried ritual objects and led the sacrificial animals through. This pride was not misplaced. Classical Athens would have had many great buildings, and in the distance, the great statue of Athena Primakos rose above them on the Acropolis. The procession ended with the final climb up the hill, passing through the Propylaea and exiting the polis to stand on the Acropolis itself. Here, the Athenians would perform the rituals of the day. A peplos, a traditional dress of ancient Greek women, was draped over the ancient statue of Athena Polias. This was being given to Athena as a birthday present and was woven by the Athenian women during the year. Carefully woven into the material was a scene showing Athena's duel with the giant Enceladus. The statue was wooden, and so no longer remains, but had predated the classical temple, the Erechtheion, it resided in. A remaining statue from the pediment of a more ancient, archaic temple on the site may give us an idea of what it could possibly have looked like. Rolled through the city in the procession, a much larger peplos would have been hung from the mast of a ship like a sail. This was made by professional mail weavers and celebrated Athens' proud naval force, as well as showing gratitude to Athena. Scholars suggest this could perhaps have been draped over the chryselephantine Athena Parthenos, but unfortunately the ancient accounts leave out this detail. After this, a great sacrifice would be made. In the years of the great Panathenaia, this would be a hecatomb, 100 oxen. The best parts of the sacrificial offerings were saved for a smaller offering to Athena Nike. The Athenians clearly valued what their patron had given them in her victorious form. It should not be forgotten that sacrifices were as much a communal event as they were a religious one. Those who were part of the procession were given meat on the Acropolis itself. Remaining meat would be taken back to the Kerameikos and given to men from the demes in Attica. Being paid for by the state, this was a valuable source of meat in the diet for many, and helped bring the entire city together. The Greater Panathenaia saw contests as part of the festival. The first was competing musician and rhapsodes, playing various instruments and reciting Homer to the audience. As with all of the competitions, there was a separate event for boys and for men. The winnings could be enormous. The lyre competition was given a prize worth 1,000 drachma, 3 times an annual wage at the time. Next, over a few days prior to the procession, competitions in running, pentathlon and pankration, a martial art, were held. The winners would be given several specially decorated amphorae filled with olive oil, again a very generous prize. Then there was horse and chariot racing, and an especially dangerous competition, the apobates, where a hoplite would jump off a moving chariot and then attempt to jump back into a different one. Lastly, there were the contests between the demes, the tribes of Attica. There was a prize for the most handsome man, and for the best Pyrrhic dance, performed naked with a shield, remembering Athena defeating the giants. The final competition to take place prior to the procession was the torch race, an ancient relay where demes would compete to be the first to light the fire at the altar of Athena on the Acropolis. Their team started at the harbour of Piraeus before making their way through the city. The final event saw different demes competing in a boat race, taking place after the procession. Here, Athens would remember its history with Poseidon and Athena, whilst also demonstrating its naval dominance.